So our next current event that we're going to move on to is the continuing saga of trying to prevent a government shutdown in the United States. So this has been going on since, I think, September. So it's been like 5 months. This was one of the first, we've been talking about this almost since the show began, and we started this thing last May. So I'm going to give a brief background, hopefully. So we had Kevin McCarthy. He was the Speaker of the House for a while. He was a Republican, and he made a deal with President Joe Biden and Congressional Democrats to pass a continuing resolution, which kept the government open for a little bit longer than the deal had initially planned to after September. It gave them 45 days, and it was like, okay, so we're basically extending our deadline to create a new budget 45 days from now. Well, they came to that agreement with conditions that kind of kept government funding at the same level that it had been at in the year before, maybe with minor cuts to non-defense spending. So this passed, but it passed with Democrat support because hard-right Republicans in the House Freedom Caucus hated this deal. They thought that the cuts in spending were far too little. They were outraged that Kevin McCarthy passed them, and it ended up leading to him being ousted as the Speaker.
First time in the nation's history.
Yes, so extremely unprecedented. Matt Gaetz, who is he technically a member of the Freedom Caucus? Do you know?
I actually don't know. I imagine so.
I don't know either. His politics are populist right. You get it. He raised the motion to vacate. They kicked him out as Speaker. And after an extremely tumultuous process of nominating multiple other speakers and voting for, trying to vote them in, failing to vote them in, the Republicans end up voting in this guy, Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson never had a leadership role in Congress before. So he was completely thrown into this, although his politics were super far right. So the people like Matt Gaetz, who had kicked Kevin McCarthy out, they were happy with Mike Johnson. So the thing that happened, Mike Johnson comes in, the 45-day continuing resolution that Kevin McCarthy passed starts to run out, and Mike Johnson needs to pass something else to keep the government open. And so he does pass something else. It's a 75-day continuing resolution that, again, pretty much keeps the government funding at standard levels. He's saying, look, we just need more time to negotiate a deal with the Democrats that is more favorable to us. And so already the far right is mad. The House Freedom Caucus is mad. They're like, we kicked out McCarthy and we're just getting kind of the same thing here. What's the deal? So they're mad, but they're like, okay, he just got here. Let's give him a chance. So those 75 days are about to run out. That continuing resolution was split into two parts. One expires January 19th and the other expires February 2nd. So once we hit January 19th, the government is going to enter a partial shutdown.
Yes.
But then, a few days ago, we get news that Mike Johnson has come to an agreement with Senate Democrats and Joe Biden for a deal to fund the government. And we're thinking, okay, so we need to see how is this deal going to look compared to the last ones that the far right has hated, that got Kevin McCarthy ousted. It looks exactly the same.
Literally exactly the same.
Exactly the same.
Small adjustments.
Yes.
So the top line figure is $1.6 trillion for fiscal year 2024. That includes $886 billion for defense and $704 billion for non-defense. That number is a little bit up in the air.
Yeah.
Johnson is out saying $704 billion non-defense. Chuck Schumer is saying, nope, that's 700 and what'd you say,
772. But these are technicalities. They came to a deal with barely any cuts in spending from the last year.
Exactly. Johnson is celebrating the $16 billion of cuts that he was able to get out. These are mainly coming from the IRS. He's taking money back from the IRS that was given to the IRS in the Inflation Reduction Act. We are big proponents of giving the IRS more money so that they have the power to go after millionaire tax cheats. We did a whole episode about tax evasion and the history of defunding the IRS and its consequences. You should go check that out. But Mike Johnson also got a lot of money, COVID money, back and pulled that back from the executive branch. So Mike Johnson came out of that room with Chuck Schumer. He's going on a victory lap. He's proud of himself. He's like, oh my God, I did this. Chuck Schumer's even saying like, listen, say what you want about the guy. He's not a bad dude.
Yeah.
Chuck Schumer's like, that's a good guy. But here's the deal. There is nothing worse in the Republican Party than to be called a good guy by New York Democrat Chuck Schumer.
Yeah.
So naturally, Mike Johnson comes out of this thinking he's got a deal. He did it. He's the guy who got it done. Well, Republicans are rebelling against him naturally. Marjorie Taylor Greene comes out right away and she says, "I am a no," in all capital letters to the Johnson-Schumer budget deal. This $1.6 trillion budget agreement does nothing to secure the border, stop the invasion, or stop the weaponized government targeting Biden's political enemies and innocent Americans.
I really quickly want to point out that language of "I am a no" to the Johnson-Schumer budget deal. It's very reminiscent of a remark that Matt Gaetz made right before Kevin McCarthy got ousted, that the McCarthy-Jeffries-Biden government
That's exactly right.
was ruining America or something like that.
Right. He looped McCarthy in with the Democrats entirely. And she's doing exactly the same thing with the Johnson-Schumer line.
She's othering him completely to
Yes.
try to boost herself up. And I just imagine that everyone else on the far right is about to follow suit.
Oh, exactly. And listen, I want to bring attention to one thing Marjorie Taylor Greene said here. Does nothing to secure the border. Well, are you forgetting that Joe Biden has put forth a $14 billion budget deal specifically for border funding that will go to a lot of things that we will talk about in a second? So if you really do care about the border, wouldn't you support a lot of this initiative? It's actually a bipartisan thing coming from Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats and the White House. So if you really cared about the border, you'd be on that and you'd be talking about that. But it seems like you just want to cause a ruckus and yell into the wind.
Yes.
But that's a whole other conversation that we'll get to in a second. In addition to Marjorie Taylor Greene, we also have Chip Roy. Chip Roy is a prominent House Freedom Caucus member, and he has not ruled out calling for a motion to vacate. Chip Roy, he has not ruled out ousting Mike Johnson.
And
so here we are.
Like you just said, Kevin McCarthy was the first Speaker of the House to ever be ousted. Okay, that was 3 months ago. And now we're talking about running it back.
Running it back. Doing the same thing over and over again. We're in fucking Groundhog Day with these people.
It's insane.
And Republicans have to recognize, and a lot of them do, that they only have a 2-seat majority. George Santos got expelled. Kevin McCarthy retired. Steve Scalise is out getting treated for cancer. Guys, you don't have a choice. You have a small majority.
Yeah.
This means you have to compromise. It's what you have to do. So yesterday, Mike Johnson opened up the floor with a rules vote to begin the debate on this budget deal. And the rule vote failed. I want to put this in perspective. Since 1995, rule votes have only failed 9 times. All 9 of them happened within the last 7 months. This is totally ungovernable.
Yeah.
We are a build nothing country, as we've talked about. We're also becoming a do nothing country.
Yeah, it's scary. We talk about the Overton window, right? It's like, what is the acceptable conversation? This makes me think of a type of Overton window of like, what is valid as a mode of operation for the government?
Right.
And now we're getting to the point where these constant votes against rules are part of just the modus operandi, right? And that's not good. We do not exist in a global context to be able to be this ineffective at governing.
Yes.
And yet our polarization is creating exactly that.
Well, Joe Biden and a lot of Democrats always kind of talk about this notion of democracy versus authoritarianism and the competition that these two systems of government are in internationally. And one of the very prominent and good things about an autocracy is they're fast.
Yeah.
They are agile. They are quick to action. If we are this stunted that we are unable to fund our food stamp programs, guys, what are we doing here? We're going to stand no chance against the international autocracy order that we're up against.
Yeah. We're going to we're basically going to force more autocracy into our country.
Yeah.
Because the only way we can do anything is with executive action.
Yeah, we are totally forfeiting our democratic principles by not cooperating and not making compromise where necessary.
Yes.
We are lending ourselves to becoming autocrats, even if we're thinking we're fighting the system. Right?
Totally.
So this is all just a mess. And Mike Johnson has already basically gone back, and he's basically saying that the Schumer deal is basically dead. Every Republican who comes out of a backdoor meeting with Mike Johnson is saying Schumer deal's done. Schumer deal's done. Now we're between a CR, a continuing resolution to fund government until they can come up with another deal, or just a general shutdown. And I don't think Republicans have the appetite for another CR. I don't think they do. They didn't have an appetite for the first CR. The first CR only passed because Democrats got on board, and more Democrats voted for the CR than Republicans did.
Yeah, exactly. And Johnson, I think, is probably too scared at this point to try to get another CR through with Democrat support. So the question becomes, right, what should Democrats be doing? Should they have pitched in some of their votes to get a more moderate but still Republican speaker? And at this point, I think we're getting too close to having a Speaker of the House who says either you cut food stamps by 50% or we shut down the government, right? There is a value to having someone who you can negotiate with, someone who can exist in that position based on some level of bipartisan support just so that you can function the government. And I think it's time that, yes, the hard right Republicans deserve most of the blame, but you can't completely absolve the Democrats either.
No, listen, the Democrats do need to do something to make sure that the government continues to function. It is unfortunate, but this is the reality we're in. Republicans, as they stand with this libertarian populist streak that they're in, do not want government, period.
Yeah.
They do not want the government involved in anyone's lives, whether that be from food stamps to anything else. They don't want it. And so when a push comes to shove and we get votes to whether or not to fund the government or not, or to shut it down or not, Republicans say, okay, shut it down. That's what I was voted in here to do anyway.
Yeah.
And so we cannot allow Republicans of that nature to get power. But then this is the argument from the Democrat side. Democrats are saying, why would we prop up a failing party? Why would we give a party that is so beholden to radicals and reactionaries? Why would we give them any legitimacy by making them our leader? If Republicans are really concerned about governing, even if any Republicans are concerned about governing, we're down to two, right? 2-seat majority. Shouldn't they just join on to the Democrats and vote for Hakeem Jeffries, or even join with Democrats and vote for a more moderate Democrat?
So do you think it's more like it's an easier story to tell that the Democrat pitched in to vote for a moderate Republican, or is it an easier story to tell for those 3 Republican representatives that decide, I'll vote for Hakeem Jeffries?
What do you mean easier story to tell? From whose perspective? What
Easier to pitch to my constituents.
As who? The moderate Republican?
Or the moderate or the Democrats who prop up the Republicans, right? Which side is more viable? Because I think because the Republicans are already in the majority, it's more viable for some kind of moderate Democrat to say why they wanted to prop up the moderate Republican in order to keep government functioning.
Well, I would say that, but a lot of these moderate Republicans are in districts where Joe Biden won not 3 years ago. So in a lot of ways, these Republican congressmen are representing majority Biden districts that don't, as far as we know of the current election results, do not want a Donald Trump second term.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, it seems like it would actually be in the moderate Republicans' better interest to go and vote on the Democrat side. It might actually propped up their ability to win re-election.
Okay.
Right?
Maybe.
So it's a whole mess of a situation here. But the point is, we are dangerous of running into a situation where we are governed by people who do not operate on logic. We have always had people in our government who don't operate on logic. That is natural. That is what is supposed to happen. They aren't supposed to be the leaders of the parties. And that's where we're at now.
Yeah. No one's reining them in. They're controlling everything.
Yeah.
The crazies.
So now it's either shutdown or CR. And I think we'll record our next episode before January 19th. So we'll give another update before that deadline hits.
Before. Yeah.